Thank you all for coming and welcome to the 33rd Annual California Small Farm Conference. We, of course, had to make it virtual this year. So those of you that have joined us in the past, you know that this is a really different format for us, but thanks for coming along and joining us in this virtual conference. You are currently at the flower growers and farmer florist workshop. So if this is where you planned to be, then stick around. If you're here by accident, feel free to stay. But we will be showing a brief video on the Sacramento Valley Flower Collective, and then following up with a question and answer period with a couple of flower growers and farmer florists. And so wanted to thank all of you for joining us. Of course, conferences are made by their attendees, so thank you all who are attending this workshop. Maybe you've attended other workshops throughout the course of the virtual conference, but thanks for being here. We really appreciate it. And of course, thank you to our panelists, and thank you to the videographer who helped produce the video. Her name's Ann Hammerski. And thank you to the sponsors and exhibitors for joining. Sounds like, sorry, I think was getting a little feedback, but thanks for everybody for making this virtual conference happen. So also wanted to let you all know that this event is free. As you know, we really appreciate you joining us, and we were able to put on this free conference because we're in the virtual space this year. But just wanted to encourage you to consider donating to CAF while attending the conference. Your donation helps sustain this effort and sustain the work that CAF does to grow more resilient family farms, communities, and ecosystems. So thank you for considering that. Wanted to let you know that all attendees are going to be muted throughout this webinar, but you are welcome to type anything in the chat. If you've got questions as they come up, please feel free to add them to the chat. That's going to help us have a dialogue and conversation as we go. And make sure that you are sending your questions to all panelists and attendees. So if you click on the chat, you'll see there's a little blue arrow, blue box down at the bottom, and you can click panelists, or you can click panelists and attendees. And please send your questions to all panelists and attendees so everybody can see the questions as they come in. Some attendees might have some of the same questions, so it's helpful if we can all see them. And of course, please keep all your comments respectful and constructive. And we are, we're just going to be monitoring the chat and asking those questions as they come up. So before we start the video and throughout the conference, if you feel like you want to drop in your name and where you are and your farm name, if you're a farmer, feel free to drop that in so we can get a better idea of who's on this webinar. And before we start our video in just a second, we're just going to put up a brief poll to get an idea of who's here. And how you would describe yourself. So are you flower curious? Are you currently growing flowers? Are you growing flowers and looking to incorporate floristry? Are you a farmer florist in action? If you want to take a minute and just drop in who you are, then we'll get a good idea of who's on this call today. And without further ado, Evan is going to start our video. And so this video is focused on the Sacramento Valley Flower Collective, which is a group of farmers, farmer florists, and florists that work in the Sacramento Valley area. And we will, we'll get to learn all about it and then follow up with a conversation with a couple of farmer florists and flower growers. All right, so how you would describe yourself: 58% of folks are flower curious. I am flower curious also. So you're in good company. Let's see, 21% are currently growing flowers. 9% are growing flowers and looking to incorporate floristry. And then 12% are farmer florists in action. All right, so we've got a good group of flower loving folks on this webinar today. And of course, we have our excellent panelists who we'll give a more thorough introduction after the video, but I'm joined here with Deena Miller of Sweet Roots Farm, Elle Huftill-Balzer of Sweet Mabel's Farm, and Angie Tomey of Little Boy Flowers. All right, Evan, can you cue up our video? Oh, I see that Anne's joining us today. Anne helped produce this video.
I am Victoria Rule and I own What the Flowers. I've been running What the Flowers since 2015, and I started with the collective right around the same time when I just did a little search and found that there was a lovely group of people that were already doing what I really wanted to be part of, and that's how I ended up becoming a collective member.
Hi, my name is Elle Huftill-Balzer, and I am the owner and proprietress of Sweet Mabel's Farm in West Sacramento, and I'm going into my 3rd year farming, and I became a collective member the first year I started farming, and it was an excellent networking opportunity. And
Hi, I'm Amber Villarreal. I own Redhead Flower Bed in Rio Linda in Northern California. I'm going into my 4th season as a farmer florist, and it started out kind of as a hobby that's grown into a business, and I'm also going to be the incoming president for the Sacramento Valley Flower Collective this year. So I found the Flower Collective in, I believe, 2017 or 2018, and it had already been kind of established loosely by another handful of farmers, flower farmers in the area, and it's kind of grown. Last year was our first year that we laid out official membership rules and kind of defined what it means to be part of the collective. This is going to be going into our 2nd year, and I'm really excited for being able to really spread the word about what we do. The collective is a collaborative group of farmers and florists that are all focused on trading of resources and locally and education between ourselves and the general public. There are some outlets that do exist, but they're bigger. There's ones that there's a giant florist, or not florist, a flower farmer Facebook group, but it's like US wide. Nothing's really specific to our area as far as Facebook groups go. There's always, zone specific groups that you can find, but there's nothing that is as specific as we are to the Sacramento Valley. We even have little microclimates. So the need that it filled for the farmers was just collaboration in, hey, have you grown this seed? Have you grown this bulb? When do I put it in? Should I put it in the sun? Should I put it in the shade? Can I pull it out of the ground now and save it? And the addition of the florists has been instrumental, because now we have this way to know what they want. We're not left guessing on if we're going to seed, 500 Lisianthus or anything like that. We need thousands of Lisianthus. I don't know why. That was the first one that came to mind. But if we're going to seed, some random zinnia variety that's new in the market, are we even going to be able to sell it? So having the florist there to tell us, yes, I want that color, I need that color, I want that palette, it helps everybody be able to kind of guide what our season's going to look like, so that we're not kind of out on an island on our own.
And I will say that, as she said, that we're networking with each other. And so a lot of the resources that you find in general flower growing books, or just even information online from the actual like bulb provider or seed provider, tends to be for not the Sacramento area or even California in general, because it's all incorporating frosts, like hard frosts, medium frosts, some sort of cold weather, whereas we have warm weather all year round. And so we do have a different variety of either maybe bacterial infections or pests, or like any number of things that other people wouldn't be experiencing. So having this very specific group of people really does help. And me as a new flower farmer, when I started on, I didn't know a lot of what I was doing, and I had excellent resources talking to other flower farmers in the area and getting specific concrete information, as opposed to just trying to reinvent the wheel myself every time.
For a florist, it helps to know what they're growing, but at the same time, I'm probably the only florist who isn't super specific, except she must grow me all of the scented geranium. I will forever buy that. Things that are super easy for other people to grow, just all willy-nilly, are not easy for me to grow. And so knowing that I have a group of farmers that are growing things for not just for me, but I feel like they're for me, makes it easier for me to just know, one, where my product is coming from, the quality, the longevity of things, and then be able to ask them all the questions about what they know. But sometimes they're growing things that are brand new, and they're like, let me know how this does in arrangements, and if it doesn't do really well, then I can let them know, hey, this isn't working, I'm probably not going to buy that again, sort of thing. Or this is what I did with it and it didn't hold up really well, or this lasted for 2 weeks longer than I had anticipated. I think that helps, at least for me. Like, I never really tell them. I get that question, what do you want us to grow? Grow whatever. I will buy it and I will use it. It doesn't matter what color it is. And of course I do have certain color palettes that I stick to during certain seasons and depending on what I'm doing, but I'm just happy to know that they're growing anything and that it's local and that I can get it. I cannot do this, and I know what goes into everything that they do. I've watched Elle, specifically because I'm out here quite a bit, just go from literally the dirt to the seed to the seedlings, and then one day I'm here and it's like this, and the next day I'm here and it's flourishing like crazy. So I can appreciate what they're doing, knowing that I can't do that myself.
I think that a lot of driving the trends as we grow can also be on us and the florists, that the florists in being able to communicate directly with all the farmers, they can pick something up, and if they've got a big enough following, they post it on their Instagram, and their customers go nuts over it, and then the next florist over is like, oh my god, I need that. So we're very community driven, and can kind of have a little bit of ability to drive some of that trend setting just by being like, oh my god, look at how beautiful these zinnias are. Because zinnias, on a larger scale, they don't travel well. Like, they're one of the flowers that they don't travel well, they don't hold up in the cooler. You need to get them locally, and so we can be responsible for pushing out all this information to the community about how amazing zinnias really can be and how beautiful they can be, and they can, be, elegant flowers in weddings instead of dahlias, or carnations or roses or whatever, and they come locally from a farm, and so we can all work together to kind of push that information out to the greater public.
We as farmers can help drive the trends, and I think that the largest trend that what we're trying to say here through the Flower Collective is that local is the trend. It's not necessarily the style of flower, the color of flower, but that you're getting it from the farmer. And we have the market here on the farm, and you're looking at my farm now, but we have the market here on the farm every Thursday in the main season, and the florists can come, and literally the things have been harvested the day before, and so you're getting something super fresh, super local, like she's saying, things that don't ship. You can pick them up here, and you are getting it local, and so florists can come, and they don't necessarily are coming with something in mind that they're looking for that fits this huge overarching trend that's happening, you know, in the floral industry, like it's yellow and gray this year, but
which I love. I was doing that last year. But we've got farmers too that are part of the collective that grow things that not all the other farmers grow, like Amy Barnes. And she's growing all of the Australian like foliages, and I'm personally love all of that. They hold up really well, and so it's nice to see that there's farmers that have like this little niche of product that they're willing to try out, and then it starts booming and suddenly everybody wants it.
And I think having the collective too has allowed me to, if I get an order and I don't have enough of a product, or I have a florist that's coming to me that's looking for a specific color, I can immediately call, you know, 4 or 5 different people within, you know, 30 minutes driving time of me, and one of them's gonna have it. So we're really dedicated to collaborating and making sure that we're taking care of our florists, you know, just as long as it's local. That's our goal, because the product's going to be better. It's better for the environment. We're, you know, reducing our carbon footprint, and we're just growing more sustainably than the, you know, the traditional floriculture has been for the last 50 years.
And if you go to the large like wholesale florists too, things, you know, florists come in and they touch everything and they bonk it around, and so you don't know how long it's been. You don't know how long it's been in their warehouse. You don't know how many people have pushed it around to knock the petals off. You don't know
how long it's been out of a bucket and then put back in a bucket without being cut. Like, there's so many factors that you have to consider when doing that. And I know coming to them, like, I know exactly what they're doing to the product that I'm picking up.
2020 kind of messed things up, but before that, we did a lot of educational outreach and community outreach. So for the past, I believe it's 3, maybe even 4 years, for the Small Farm Conference, we've all collectively gotten together. Farmers have donated products, florists have donated time. We flowered the UC Davis dinner hall, and we've done the boutonniere bar and the corsage bar. So we work together, we've been able to share ideas collaboratively, and I think as far as benefits beyond the community and the support, what's really drawn me to it is the ability to share clientele, share customers. For instance, I live really closely to another farm. We're literally down, you know, a block away from each other, Don Creek Farm and my farm. And Don Creek is a much bigger operation than I am, but she sold out of all of her tulips when spring hit, like instantly. But she knew that I had tulips and I didn't have as big of a market yet, but she drove all of her customer base my way because she knew that I still had tulips, and I sold everything that I had that spring season. So it's beneficial because the big guys are helping the small guys. We have Drew Rivers and Hannah Mueller of Full Belly Farm are also members, and they support my, you know, Instagram posts. Hannah reshares everybody's information. We've had members that go help at the farm for the hose down celebration every year. So we're just really focused on supporting everybody, no matter what, you know, level or scale our business or our farm is at.
I wouldn't categorize myself by any means as a farmer florist, but I do floral work. And Mother's Day last year, Victoria got, you know, too many orders, so she threw the rest of them my way, and so I was like, well, that's what I'm doing. And so it was a fun thing to do that, and also have someone, like she say, like that she trusted me to uphold her clients that she usually works with.
We're all on lockdown. We couldn't really go anywhere or do anything, but the one thing people knew they could do was support small businesses, because one, so many of them were closing. People didn't want to leave, or we couldn't actually congregate, widely in certain places, and so it made it easy to know that they could support local businesses, and also then send flowers, either bring them home to themselves, because let's face it, flowers are life, and they bring like happiness and love and everything to everyone, whether they were buying for themselves or buying for other people. They're $35 for their quick ding dong ditch flower that I was literally dropping on their porch. It was supporting so many different businesses, and their money, they wanted to do that, and we got a huge spike in sales because everyone thought that was the most amazing thing, and I wasn't prepared for that, but we did it. And then that's when I was like, I'm done here, can you please help me with these flowers? Like, it just makes it just takes it back to, this is how we support our community.
Yeah, when COVID came and everybody got locked down, it really surged back to circling the wagons in your community, supporting local farms on all aspects, because all of the outlets for farms sort of had to change. Like, schools weren't buying produce anymore, weddings weren't happening, so large events, large congregations weren't happening. So it all sort of, the outlets switched, and a lot more individuals were purchasing, and like she said, like, buying local, because if they weren't doing it, then who was going to be doing it? So we really did see a lot of community support of purchasing local things. We saw a lot more farmers coming out to florists coming out to the market and looking for local flowers. You're saying about shipment chains have been disrupted.
Yeah.
So out of this, that there will be more produce and flowers being purchased locally, and hopefully coming out of it, people will see the benefits that they received as, the carbon footprint of not purchasing things that have been shipped, the longevity of the product,
The smell.
the smell,
Yeah.
like supporting people in your local community families.
When I'm referring clients to other people that I know, they're going to people that I know with product that I trust. It helps. I think that really helps tighten our collective, just being able to make sure that we're supporting one another, whether it is just commenting or liking someone's Instagram post. Like, I tag them in literally everything that I do, because literally everything that I use is from someone's farm, someone from the collective, and so I like to make sure that people know. That's a huge thing for me, is that my clients know where their product is coming from.
I would say that a lot of it for me was networking, and meeting with other growers, and learning tips on growing, and all the things we sort of covered before, but also meeting florists. Like, not only do we have a professional relationship, but we also have a personal relationship. And so through this collective, I've met new people and made new headway with growing and selling. I think that everyone that I've encountered in the Flower Collective is a success story. We all have learned and grown from knowing each other. I personally flat out would not have gone anywhere without having the Flower Collective. I come from a vegetable farming background, and when I went into flower farming, it was like back to square one. So being able to reach out to people, especially other women, like, that's really awesome that we do. There are male farmer florists for flower, but the ones that I know are all women, and so to be able to reach out to other women and say, help me, and other women farmers, and have them really help me get off the ground. I don't know that I would have without the collective.
You can find more information about the Flower Collective at our website, which is Sacramento Valley Flower Collective.com. We have information there about all of our members. There's a link to each individual farmer and florist website. Also, our mission statement, events that might be coming up, and how to join. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Okay, Evan, can you start our videos? Thank you. Great. Well, yeah, so that was a video that's focused on the Sacramento Valley Flower Collective, and we're hoping if you have any specific questions about that, feel free to ask them. Elle is a member of the Sacramento Valley Flower Collective. I think Angie is as well. But we can also just have I'm thinking we'll just have a larger conversation just about flower growing and farmer floristry in general. So if you have any questions about that, that's what we're here to talk about. And so I saw people started putting things in the chat. And before we get to the questions, just want to have an opportunity for each of our panelists to just say something about themselves and their farm. And yeah, maybe just share your farm name, where you're located, and if there's anything else you'd like to share about your farm. So Deena Miller.
Hi, yeah. My name is Deena and I have Sweet Roots Farm. I'm in Grass Valley, California, kind of in between the other panelists in the foothills of California. I run this farm with my husband, Robbie, and we focus primarily on flowers, wholesale, retail, and wedding design, plant starts, and we've stopped selling produce. So we've merged over the years in the direction of flowers mostly.
Great. Yeah. So they were vegetable growers and have slowly let flowers take over their farm.
Yes.
And Angie Tomey.
Hi, I'm Angie, and I have a business, Little Boy Flowers. I'm in Nevada City, up in the foothills also. Let's see, I grow on about 1.5 acres. I kind of recalculated it recently, and I think I'm about 1.5 acres. I grow for weddings and a CSA, and I do wholesaling as well. And we are getting back into doing farmers markets as well.
Great. Thanks for being here, Angie.
Yeah.
And Elle.
Hi, I'm Elle. I have Sweet Mabel's farm, and I'm in West Sacramento, and I actually farm 1 acre on an urban lot. So I'm at the end of a cul-de-sac in a neighborhood, and I grow only for, I grow for florists, to direct sales to florists with a market on the farm, and I do mixed bouquets to the co-ops, the local co-ops in the area.
Great. Thanks, Elle. So Fiona had the first couple of questions, so I'll share Fiona's questions. How do you cover your farming costs selling flowers? And is there any place that you would recommend to find guidance on this? So I'm guessing guidance around business planning with respect to growing flowers and doing farmer florist work. And then follow up is about growing outside in California as opposed to growing in greenhouses.
So was the question how we have our startup costs covered or our in-season costs covered?
That's a great question. I guess if anybody wants to talk more broadly just about getting started with a farmer florist business or a flower growing business, I think just based on the poll, I think a lot of folks are maybe interested in starting or are just in the beginning phases. So Elle, I know you recently started a flower farm. So do you want to talk about that process a little bit?
Sure. I knew the owner of the property that I was leasing, so I knew that there was that property available. So I contacted that owner, and that's how I connected with the property. And as for funding, I actually did some fund sourcing from my friends and family, and they all helped pitch in to start to get the funds together to start the farm. And then, you know, with pertaining to like selling and the money within the season and hooking up with florists and stuff, really like, honestly, the collective was my into that. Like I met all the women in the collective, met all the people in the collective, and they helped me hook up with florists and kind of get myself going in that direction.
So I'll answer that also is that I started my business sort of as an offshoot of our veggie operation. So we already had the land and the equipment. So, you know, that part was easy transition, and I didn't have to invest a lot in a lot of new equipment. So I also started just growing. I didn't build tunnels for a couple years because they really do require a significant amount of money upfront. So just growing in the field and not, yeah, I mean, I didn't have a cooler for first couple years as well. So that was, that was tricky, but I didn't know any different at the time. And I kind of limped along and it was fine, but I think as a new grower, you have to just build slowly. Most people do, at least if you don't have access to a lot of capital. Build slowly and choose where you're going to put your energy. Like, are you going to buy a rototiller or a tractor or but yeah, I'm always kind of encouraging people to just kind of start small. You don't have to like put up a bunch of tunnels at first. It takes just start growing in the ground and see how it works.
I would also say I got my start on a vegetable farm at my friend's vegetable farm. He was running Everett Family Farm. And so there's so many kinks to work out. If you're growing vegetables, if you're growing flowers, from really what you're growing, how it does on your property, and then all the way to how you process it, where you sell it, where you keep it, how you keep the quality high. So starting small was definitely in my personality and desire. Doing some training, there's lots of different ways to get access to training. Now there's quite a few virtual classes you can do, but then I did the business planning class through the small business planning class through the UC extension. And that just made me start to think about some of these bigger concepts that I just weren't in my head before. Locally, Sierra Harvest does a business training class, and we wrote up a business plan with 10-year plan. It's kind of weird how close it's been, actually, our 10-year plan, now that we're entering our 11th season. But I do think it has to do a little bit with how you approach life in general. If you're going to start small with a lower budget, if you're going to take out a loan, we never felt comfortable starting with a large loan because we just didn't think we could sell enough to, our income was so small in the beginning years, especially, that made us feel pretty wary. But yet, at some point, if you want to make that bigger jump and do a little bit more infrastructure, you just have to really look at how to make a capital investment. I really think starting on someone else's property with a small space and realizing those, just like, yeah, having my first field was all dark colors, all these colors I was drawn to in flowers, but don't sell well in the spring. And I just hadn't thought about the palette through the year and how to approach that. So yeah, I would definitely have a practice year with no expectation and no pressure on yourself, and being aware of not undercutting the other people in your area who are also selling flowers, because that can happen in the beginning as well.
Yeah, and Deena, when I came out to your farm and visited you, I appreciated how you talked about like evaluating, at the end of your season, evaluating like what worked and what didn't work, and continuously like honing in on what really works in terms of sales, and then in terms of like what works for you personally running a farm business that, that can be taxing.
Absolutely.
So there's a couple questions. Let's see. Do flower growers also keep flower stock for pollinators? And then what are your favorite flowers to grow? Heather had this question.
I do not. I have some perennials on the property, so that would be, some stock through the full, year round, but I don't have a pollinator row at this point. But that would be something nice to have on a farm. I've been on several farms that have hedgerows, pollinator hedgerows, and I think it's really helpful. And then as for a favorite flower to grow, I would say right now I'm loving snapdragons. I really, really like growing snapdragons. And reason for that is I think they have really nice, straight, strong stems. They're fun to cut. They're satisfying to harvest. And I think they come in a lot of beautiful colors.
Deena and Angie, do you have a favorite flower to grow?
Yeah, I mean, that's always hard. But one of my favorites is ranunculus. I love growing ranunculus, plant them in the fall, and they're just about to pop right about now. A couple more weeks and I'll have some really nice ones. And as far as pollinator habitat, I do have a lot of perennials on the garden, around the farm. So there's always flowering shrubs and perennials flowering at different times of the year. And I love having that. And if you have space for that, it's a great thing. I don't necessarily plant annuals for just pollinator habitat, but I see pollinators out on my flowers all the time. So yeah.
We have hedgerows throughout the farm that are really good habitat throughout the season, whether they're blooming or for just the habitat of the insects. And then now that we grow more flowers, we cut the majority of them, but I don't like having an order for 100 white zinnia and I only have 100. So we have about 10 or 15% more that are out there blooming that are covered in pollinators at most times. Unfortunately, I'm allergic to honeybees, so that's been we did have our honeybee hives moved because of that. It's getting worse and not the best allergy for a flower farmer, but yeah, I think with flowers, you never quite get to all of them, and you can't always have them deadheaded. So there is an amazing amount of, it's a great thing to have when you're growing vegetables to bring in pollinators and beneficial insects to your farm.
And Deena, back to something you said about the year-round color palette. Anne in the chat asked, what does the yearly color palette look like? That's a concept that folks might not be familiar with. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it really is super dependent on where you're selling your flowers. So a lot of times if you're going to focus on grocery stores, the palette tends to be bright and cheery. Spring tends to have that little bit of a brighter palette. Fall can be a little bit moodier with maroons and maroon blush or some of those darker copper shades. But then through the whole season, if you're going to sell to florists or if you're going to sell or do floral design for weddings yourself, you will likely have a lot of requests for white and blush. And then also what's kind of in at the moment, I have quite a few jewel toned weddings this year and a lot of rust and like a rust palette with a pop of mustard. So having those whites in abundance, blushes in abundance through each season, and then just being aware of where you're going to be selling and what catches the eye. But more than palettes for outlets to like grocery stores, flowers that are really long lived. So we always grow pastel blue status. So we will do some grocery store bouquets, but if that blue really pops with quite a few other colors, and it's not the typical purple that you see all the time, so it's a little more unique and it lasts and lasts and lasts. So we always try and have some of those bright poppy spring colors, especially when you're doing those mixed bouquets. I hope that covers, kind of touches on a couple aspects of that. But yeah, we're asking your florist too where you're selling, what they're seeing in their trends coming up, and you can make small adjustments while you're sewing, just a few more trades of a certain color, like apricot, peach, straw flower, and status is always going to be a big hit because it goes into a number of different palettes and it's just a really beautiful shade, those shades.
And what about green fillings? Do you all grow green filler or do you purchase that?
For green filler, since I do mostly wholesale and then mix bouquets to the co-ops and things, I actually forage for my green filler around town because I don't have, my property's not large enough to spend space on green filler. So I just either get it from my home gardens or friends' gardens, things like that.
Do you have any favorite filler that you forage for?
Bay, really like bay. Lasts a long time, is beautiful leaf structure. I also have a gardenia here on my house that I really like.
Angie, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I have a lot of, like Deena, I have a lot of perennial hedgerows and shrubbery that I've planted over the years. So I have a fair bit of my own greenery around to use in design work and in my bouquets. So yeah, lots of shrubs, lots of woodies and eucalyptus and things like that. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
what
us
about, oh, go ahead.
we also we grow annual kind of greenery filler, but are always adding to our perennial greenery selection. I always feel like I could use a little bit more, or I need to crack the code on how to get raspberry leaf to hold better, you know, just some of those things that look really beautiful, and then I don't get great feedback on how long they hold. So we have a lot of eucalyptus. Every year we plant more Elle Agnes, and then yeah, for things like garlands, sometimes we'll even put in like seed pods, atriplex, to have a little more texture in that. But we try and grow it all.
With green fillers too, getting creative about what you're using. Like I like to use the zinnia greens in mixed bouquets. So instead of just using the flowers, I use, cutting it just with the leaves on the end there. And I think that looks really nice. So.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody had a question about dahlias. It's at least growing in the valley where you are, Elle. I think dahlias are really tough where it's really hot.
Yeah.
Angie, it's dahlias basically a no-go for you?
For down here, it's funny because we always in our collective, we get together and chit chat and we say, how did these people in home gardens have these beautiful dahlias that they don't even try to grow? And then we're trying really hard to grow these dahlias and they just are terrible. So you can grow them. You just have to grow them in your garden and not care about them.
And at least have some cool nights, I guess.
Yeah.
Are you able to grow, Angie or Deena, where you are? I know it's a little bit cooler where you are, Deena.
Yeah, that's one of our main flowers, and it's one of our favorite flowers to grow, especially because you can't grow them in the valley. So we're looking to expand just our color palette. We don't need to grow more of them, but I'm actually really excited because they take a lot of work, they take infrastructure. And I was just listening to a podcast with Jenny Love, a no-till flower farming podcast. She's kept her dahlias in the ground for 5 years. So we're gonna, for the first year this year, we're gonna not dig them all and have a section we're gonna keep them in the ground to reduce that. But our nighttime temperatures are usually in the high 50s in the summer. Even if it's 95 in the day, we're in a cold spot. And so we can grow dahlias pretty well, and we were experimenting with a little extra shade, and it didn't really seem to make a huge difference. So we're going to just grow them in the field again. We'll plant our first tubers in pretty soon, like 4 weeks or so.
Angie, do you grow dahlias?
Yeah, I grow dahlias. They do pretty well. I have issues with powdery mildew here at this site. We have a lot of powdery mildew pressure, and the dahlias definitely succumb to that a lot here. So I'm constantly having to spray to kind of preventatively, I have to spray. Otherwise, I have terrible powdery mildew. But if I spray every other week throughout the season, then I can have good dahlias. But yeah, they definitely don't love the heat, and it's pretty hot here. So they're not as productive as probably in you know, like in the Northwest or in Santa Cruz or some of these coastal areas, but they're worth growing for sure here. They do well, and they fill a nice niche in that kind of late summer focal flower. Yeah.
They're another flower too that just does not ship well. So finding the florists that are looking for them, and then when they buy them in from the wholesaler, they're assuming maybe 1 out of 5, or you know, maybe even 20-30% of what they're buying in isn't going to be usable. And you know, I want 95% of our buckets to be usable, you know, besides the one that gets like the head popped off or what have you. So that one to me just fills all these, ticks a lot of boxes for selling wholesale as well, wholesale direct to florists. Though I don't tend to put them in mixed bouquets to grocery stores. Mostly they just go to florists and into our own design, and they just make designing so pleasant. They're so fun to use in designs because they are big and have such beautiful colors as well.
Do you all want to talk about some of your favorite resources for learning about growing different plants in your specific region? Somebody had a question about, yeah, just good resources for growing specific flowers.
The internet. I spend a lot of my evenings Googling things.
Are there any flower specific websites that you go to often, or podcasts that you listen to, or even books that you read? I know.
Yeah, personally, I look at a lot of scientific papers that people have written, only because it just has really specific information. So then I can, you know, attach myself to specific temperatures and specific things. But I also like to look at people's blogs, different farms' websites, read about their experiences, things like that. But I don't have any that I can say that I go to repeatedly.
Yeah, I would just say, obviously, Florette is sort of like the resource. She's not local necessarily, but Erin at Florette has a tremendous amount of resources available online of, you know, articles about all dahlias and every crop you can imagine. Probably she's written a blog post about it. And so that can be really helpful just to kind of hone in on some of her what works for her, although she's up in a wetter area that's a lot more mild climate. So I mean, I have kind of the old standard books like Alan Armitage's books on his cut flower books, and those are kind of like, I mean, they're fairly dated, but they give you some of that information that Elle was talking about, kind of specific requirements for certain species, what the, like peonies and things like that. So they have, I think Armitage has a couple, like a couple different books. And then I'm trying to think of some other resources, looking at my bookshelf right now. Yeah, what about you, Deena? Do you have any resources?
A good place to gather resources from, especially if you're a visual learner, the ASCFG, the Association of Specialty Cut Flower Growers. And if you're a member, there's videos from past conferences. Going to conferences can really just like inspire you, and then you can get discounts on other resources. So recently I've been going back. I kind of forgot about how many resources are within their website when you are a member. So I've gone back in there and watched a couple videos. I'm just like, I want to do a couple things differently, but I haven't done it before. So that's just a great resource. And then when I first started, I think it's called the Flower Farmer. Yes. And she, I read it cover to cover 3 times. And then I was ready to do my first season. And I think that's still a great go-to book with just some really basic, like, how wide should I make my bed? As you come up across these things, so you can do it, or you can get a little bit of advice and then do it. And I like to just have some some advice first. So then my next mistake is the one I learned, not all of them. So and then I have a lot of books that I've bought in. Yeah, some of Erin Floret books, but I don't tend to look at them as much as I will learn from possibly like a podcast or a video from the ASCFG, or the Cut Flower Quarterly is their publication every quarter. Yeah.
And can you say again what
Oh, yeah.
ASCFG stands for folks that might be interested?
The Association of Specialty Cut Flower Growers. And I know, Angie, you remember before I was, and it's one of those networking situations where you're really able to pick people's brains who've been growing flowers for 30 years, or maybe they're growing on a huge scale and super, super efficient at making mixed bouquets and actually make them make money, whereas other people are on this micro scale doing high-end weddings. So there's this range of advice throughout that organization.
I think I'm also part of several Facebook groups that are nationwide. There's one just like, it's called Flower Growers, but posting a question to, thousands of people who are also part of this Facebook groups. You can take a picture of your, specific problem, post it, and then you'll get, 30 answers back from growers all over the US, which is really cool. So that's another option, is sort of hive minding through Facebook.
Yeah, that's always great. And speaking of picking brains, there's one specific question here I wanted to ask that Cindy Lashbrook, who is a longtime CAF board member, asked about the California native Matilda poppy. I never quite know how to say that word, but I think it's Matilda, also the Romney cultivar. If you all have ever used that in cut flower arrangements, or figured out a way to cure it so that it holds in an arrangement.
I don't have any of it. It's so hard. I've dug it up from various spots around and tried to plant it here, and I just have not had it successfully transplant. I know that it's tricky, but once you get it established, it's amazing. Like there's that patch that's over by Briar Patch over by Sierra College up here. That's just this wild patch that's incredible. And I haven't tried to cut it. Like it's just kind of in this obscure spot. And I think when it's flowering, I don't know. I haven't, but it would be amazing. I would love to grow that, and I would love mostly just to have it around the farm, but it would be beautiful in a design. But I've never tried to grow it. To cut it. So most poppies are a little tricky, but I bet it would work. I don't know. Have you grown it, Deena?
I haven't grown it, but I would go through like that checklist of hard to get to hold things. So like you could do the quick boil of the stems or a blowtorch. You could cut it just as the bud is breaking. Do these other things that tend to work for other Cerinthe, you wrap it and then put it in the boil it, put it in the water, put it in the cooler, that sort of thing. So just different I've just used the seed pod. Anything that you can use the seed pod of too is great, because if you miss the bloom and then you have the seed pod and you can dry it, use it in different situations. But I haven't grown it, but that patch I have my eye on that patch by Sierra College. I love that. Yeah, the fried egg poppy, it's great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It is beautiful. And it is somewhat kind of like the Icelandic poppy, which you have to boil or singe the stem of. So yeah, maybe one of those techniques might work. I had a couple of questions in the chat about seeds and where you all source your seeds from, and also if you save any of your own seed. Does anybody want to talk to that? Elle?
I don't save any of my own seed. I just purchase my seed from different companies. I purchased from Johnny's, Swallowtail, Outside Pride. I think I just got some from this year. But mostly the bulk of my seeds come from Johnny's. Sunflower Selections in Woodland, if you plan on doing sunflowers, is a really great source for sunflower seeds.
Go ahead, Deena.
Okay, the bulk of my seeds comes from GeoSeed. but you definitely have to order early. They haven't caught up on the demand of how many people are ordering from them. So it took about 6 weeks to get those seeds this year. I also use Johnny's Swallowtail and Glockner. I used to get some seed from them, not anymore. They're now Ball. So yeah, but the majority are Geo seed. And we do save seed. We save about probably 30 varieties now. This last year we saved more than we had. We had a little more time, so we did.
Yeah, similar to Deena, I get a lot of my seed from Geo. They're on the East Coast, and Geo, Johnny's, and then I kind of like get the obscure things from Gelato and Chiltern and Swallowtail and some of these other small companies. And where else? Sometimes I'll get a few things from Florette, because she'll have like new varieties of celosia. She's always breeding new interesting varieties. Yeah, and I do save seed as well. Yeah, I save, I don't know how much, but it's kind of, it's often unplanned. And I'll just have a bed of like, oh, my Ami is going to seed. Okay, I'm going to go save seed. Certain things you can, are better than others to save seed on. So I save seed on a lot of like my safflower, Ami, Daucus, the black carrot, Scabiosa, some of my celosias, grasses, lots of grasses, poppies. So yeah.
And then what about bulbs? Do you purchase bulbs too? And are you able to propagate them? Deena, I know you do propagation because you sell starts as well.
Yes, not bulbs. We propagate everything from seed. We will buy in we buy in perennials every year that are harder to propagate. And bulbs, I don't know. We've gotten some from Glockner mostly. And yeah, so now we'll be working with Ball in the future for that. And Ball bought Glockner. So that's who I was comfortable with working with and had our system in place. But we don't grow a lot of bulbs compared. Angie grows quite a few more than we do, for sure.
Yeah, so I get my bulbs from Leo Burby. They have like a wholesale division, so I get some from them, some from Glockner Ball, some from Awnings in they're a Holland company. So those are kind of my three go-tos. And let's see. And I don't save, like I don't save any of, well, I do save some of my corms, of my ranunculus and anemone corms, just in case, like I can't, especially last year, I saved a ton because I was worried the supply chain was going to break down. So I do save some of my corms. They have a tendency to be a little bit more disease prone than the ones that I get new. So I'll always kind of like plant first my new ones and fill in with some of my saved corms. But I always feel a little bit better, more reassured if I save some of my ranunculus and anemone corms. But I don't save my tulips. I buy in new tulip bulbs every year.
Is that just because of the quality of the flower?
Yeah, it diminishes quite a bit. And like, if I leave them in the ground here, a lot of them will get eaten by gophers and rot, and then they're just like really small and don't hardly produce a flower. So in order to really have success with keeping tulips going. I think you need to have maybe better, like more well-drained soil or something. It's something about, I think my soil's a bit heavy and we get a lot of rain here in the winter. I think that's another issue with the dahlia overwintering in our site, is that we have, because I've done that a couple times, is had dahlias overwinter, and I lose a fair bit. But then I experimented in an area, we have very sandy soil in this one part of the farm here, and I lofted the beds up really high, and they did a lot better there. So I think with a little bit more attention, I think overwintering dahlias is good.
Mm-hmm.
I did tulips for the first time this year, and I purchased them in from awnings, and they're one, especially down in the valley. They're a one-shot thing. They're an annual, because we don't have the chill hours for them to sort of bulk back up into the bulb and produce enough energy to grow a flower. So what we do is grow the flower and then pull the bulb and the flower all together and give them to people, or deliver them to florists or wholesale with the bulb attached, and they just last longer also, as opposed to cutting them. So purchase them every year.
And Dory has a question here about price differences between direct marketing and wholesale / selling to florists. So Deena, do you want to talk about like where do you mostly sell to?
Well, so if you're already growing produce and then you're going to grow flowers, and you take the way you price produce from the way you price flowers from how you think about produce, I would say don't do that, because I have been working on approaching our pricing. It's just so different than produce. It's between a piece of art, if you're going to be designing, how do you price art, and then also wholesale flowers. So I was really wanting to make that point today, because it's taken me many, many years to like get my pricing into a category that I feel good about now. And especially if you're doing design work. So if you're going to be selling your fresh cut flowers, cut at the right stage and put into a cooler direct to a florist, they should be at least the same as what they would be buying from their wholesaler. So getting the pricing from your wholesaler. And then if you're going to be selling them in a bouquet, or even at farmer's market, think about what you would pay if you were buying that stem, and then do your retail markup on that. So florist, that's like 3.5 in a retail setting. And at a farmer's market, I would at least double it. So that turns a 10 stem bunch that you would sell $8 to a florist to a $16 10 stem bunch at a farmer's market. And you don't typically see that pricing. So there's just this huge range in flower pricing. We sell to Florifresh, which is our Florifresh and the co-op are our lowest price per stem. And then we sell direct to florists. We sell direct to the public. And that gap has gotten quite a bit bigger. A bucket to a florist versus a bucket to a bride. They used to be about $10 different, and now they're like $30 different. And so I'm still not doubling that in that situation, but the range is just so different than produce. And I think knowing what your local wholesaler is selling things for, and then understanding your quality is better, the longevity, and probably, especially with certain delicate flowers, they're going to be able to use a lot more. Just putting a premium on that. But pricing has been hard for me, and we raise our prices almost every year as I look at other pricing, and it's just not produce. And it's especially a really beautifully designed piece. Even if you took that apart and looked at all your stems and then times them by 4 to cover all the overhead of the designing, that would include your labor. It shocked me how much I should have been pricing certain things that I was underpricing. So I think I answered the question, which is just we sell in all of those arenas, and I can only really sell it at the lowest price per stem because we're also doing the higher price per stem with the value added of the design.
Yeah, that's all really good information. I think pricing is perennially tricky. Angie, do you have any tips around pricing? You do a lot of, in the past have done a lot of weddings and continue to do some weddings. How do you figure out pricing with that? Is there any resources that you go to, or is this something that you've figured out after doing it for so many years? Do you want to just kind of talk about how you figured out your pricing?
Yeah. As far as weddings go, so when I first got into doing wedding work, I did a fair bit of freelance work working for other wedding florists. So I did workshops. I did like many workshops, design workshops with some pretty famous florists back, 10 years ago. And I picked their brain on pricing. And even though they were higher than I wanted to be, it kind of gave me a little idea of sort of where I could go. Because I noticed that most of anybody who is growing around here and selling wedding flowers, their prices were really low. So that was really, really helpful to get some experience working with some other professionals in the industry and seeing what they're doing, comparing my prices with theirs and adjusting accordingly. Obviously, I can't like charge as much as, and I don't want to be charging as much as some of these kind of way more higher end florists, but it gave me somewhere to kind of to look at, something to kind of balance. I also talk to other people, like I'll call other growers, maybe on the East Coast, who are doing something very similar. Not, I wouldn't necessarily call, I guess I could call Deena, but I never have called Deena and been like, what do you charge for a bridal bouquet? I think calling other growers is a good idea too, just like getting a sense of what they're charging, and someone that you really respect and that you love their work. It'd be interesting to see what they usually they'll give you that information. Sometimes you can even get their list. You can even I've even done this in the past. I like filled out a questionnaire on someone else's website like I was a potential client, and they sent me their price list, and that was like awesome to get. And this is obviously just it was really good information. So things like that. Yeah.
And do you use software for managing your bridal clients?
I do. I use HoneyBook, and I really like that platform. It's super useful. It has everything in one location, and so that helps me organize my clients and all of our communication, and it allows you to, it's a very easy platform to work with.
That's the only way that I'm able to do, like we do about 30 weddings a year, and that's the only way, is using HoneyBook, because of the way it's formatted. And like they get an automatic reply saying I probably won't reply to them for about a week in this season. So it gives them the thing that everyone wants, which is like instant communication. And it says, we're a small family farm, and it'll take us a while. And then you could send them a brochure and questionnaire, and there's these beautiful headings that you put your own pictures in. So it really took our business, our design business and wedding design business, to the next level and made it less stressful too. And one other thing on pricing designs is like the price of a bridal bouquet has to cover what you pay to your membership at HoneyBook, the like 67 emails it takes to organize a wedding and accomplishment, and it has to pay for all the other overhead that's not part of your overhead, that's your other business, your growing business, which that overhead should be covered in the price of the flower itself, but all this extra overhead.
Yeah. Well, 10 after 4, and I want to be mindful of everybody's time on this beautiful Saturday. Before we close out, I just wanted to see if there's any, Angie, Elle, or Deena, any bit of advice that you'd like to pass on that we didn't get to today. Just given that there's a lot of people on the call who might be just starting out with flowers, is there anything that you'd like to share? Angie, Elle, or Deena?
I think me being the third year flower farmer, I'd say just go for it. Be confident. Think that your time is worthwhile and that your product is worthwhile. I see a lot of other flower farmers or growers think that what they're growing isn't worth anyone's time when, to sell it. And I think just being confident in what you're doing, reading a lot, asking a lot of questions, but just go for it.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, and also to just like start small and not start too big. I think it's tempting to just plant hundreds of different varieties, but if you can focus on like maybe 10 that are going to do pretty well in your climate and focus on those, I think that can give you a lot of good feedback, and maybe the next year you can then expand that a bit. But I know that for me, when I was kind of getting going, I was growing so many different flowers, and I felt like I was running around like a crazy person. And I ended up not using half of them, because it's amazing how little you need actually when you do design work. When I do a wedding, it's like you use so much filler, and then you use quite a bit of focal, but it's nowhere near the volume that what I use when I'm putting together my market bouquets or my CSA bouquets. It's like I use a lot less flowers. So just be mindful, don't grow too much, and put that energy into doing a really good job on like 10 or so varieties of flowers that you think will do well.
Yeah,
I would say
advice.
Working for someone else too is a great way. I had a number of mentors before even starting my trial by myself, made all those mistakes, and it was a really great way. I just wish I had done more of the design mentorship. I worked for a couple florists in my off season just to like see how they made a boutonniere faster than I make a boutonniere, just like getting those little tactile speed tricks and that sort of thing. So yeah, doing a little bit of a lot of times florists will look for someone just for a large event and trying to get on those lists and trying to do that if you're interested in design, and then just trying to visit a few farms and seeing their systems. I know this year is a hard way to do that, but I just wished I had done a couple larger events before we started getting more into events. And that would have made some things that I learned the hard way, like the right kind of shape of a vase for an outdoor event. You'd never want to use a tall French flower vase in an outdoor event unless it's secured. So just stuff like that. So we're resources. Instagram is an amazing resource. And yeah, I wish you all luck, everyone who's out there starting their flower journey. Every time we quit farming in the first 5 years that we farmed, the only thing that made me really sad when we said we were going to quit, but I have a rule: you can't quit till October, so that you leave with money in your pocket and you haven't started the next season. So every time we quit in June or July, I just was very sad about not growing flowers. Flowers are just, there's something about them that hooks you in and really fills you with joy in a way that surprised me. So I hope you all get hooked that way too.
Great advice, Deena. Yeah, starting small, believing in yourself, learning from others, all really good advice for anybody starting out with flowers. And I hope you had some other things that you took away from this video that help you build your flower business, if that's what you're setting out to do, or if that's what you're already doing and looking to enhance it. So thank you all so much for joining us. I hope that we got to at least most of the questions. There's probably some that we weren't able to get to, but thank you all for adding your questions into the chat and making this as interactive in the virtual space as possible. And just, yeah, thank you all so much for coming. Thank you, Deena, Angie, and Elle for joining us and taking time on your Saturday to talk about flowers and what you all do. There's going to be an evaluation here at the end of this webinar that's going to pop up. So please take a minute to fill that out. It's also going to be emailed to you. So if you could fill it out, that helps us do this better and better every year. And also feel free to visit our website and check out our virtual expo hall and drop in a donation if you can. There's no donation too small. We really appreciate it all to make this conference happen this year and every year. So thank you all. Really appreciate it. And I'll let you get back to your Saturdays.
All
Thank you.
right.
Good
Bye,
luck, everyone.
guys.
Thank
Good luck
you.
growing. Bye.
Thank you.
Good luck.